Patrick, how's the weather in Finland?
It's minus 20 tonight.
Wow.
I don't know how much that is in space
Fahrenheit.
degrees.
Yeah, I mean, I was just in New York and it was not that cold.
Minus
Celsius,
20 is
but it
around
was cold.
0 Fahrenheit, I think.
Okay, actually, it's minus 16, so not quite there. But during the day, we went out today and
froze.
so we had the baby in the stroller, and he had basically 15 layers of wool on him. I think he was too warm at some point. But yeah, it was funny. We got like a tank stroller, that giant wheels, and we were walking around in the snow, and he was like all snug and sleeping for the almost whole time. So it was good. The stroller has been snow tested.
Does it have like cool wheels where you can like jog with it type thing?
Well, no, it's not a jogging stroller. It's more a all-terrain stroller.
I'm imagining it like a monster truck,
It's
but a
4x4.
stroller. Yeah.
Yeah, not quite, but actually, you can't quite see it from here. But
Hey,
yeah,
stop.
I mean,
Stop
Are you talking to your cat?
No, he's
they're
talking.
fine.
She's
They're
talking to
fine.
us.
They always,
Oh,
whenever I'm
okay.
out of town for a few days, they're like really excited to see me and really just mad. And then they fight each other. It's all good.
Yeah, but it's one that is. But I always describe it like this massive, giant thing, and when people see it, they're disappointed. I just realized it could be a great "that's what she said" first thing, but right. All right, never mind. Not a great crowd tonight.
Sorry. I got distracted by the chat room. I'll
Listen.
admit it.
All right. At least I think I'm funny, and ultimately that's the only thing that matters, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, sure.
And talking about the argument thing, I think I've found that I often take the negative, not the negative, but
You're
the
the devil's
like the
advocate.
pitfalls. Not just that too, but also when we talk about the situation, I found that I'm pointing
More
out
pessimistic.
the ways in which things can't work out, or the problems, and I'm worrying I'm a little bit too negative about stuff sometimes.
Well, but that's always. I think that's the key. Is if you're like, wait, am I being too negative, and then you can adjust.
But
I
I'm
also
only
wouldn't call
realizing
you a
it now.
contrarian by nature,
No, I wouldn't.
which I would say about certain people, but not you.
No, you. wouldn't.
Would you say
But
that
yeah,
about
but
me?
I'm realizing it now. So I'm wondering if I haven't been doing it all my life,
Eh,
and only now realizing that I'm
past is imaginary.
being the downer.
Time is a flat
it though?
circle.
Talking about these kinds of, well, sci-fi really. I really like Altered Carbon.
Yeah.
I
I've
haven't
not been able
watched
to
that
sit
yet.
down and see that
I haven't
yet.
finished
Not
it yet.
bad. Well, it doesn't end great, but
It
Well,
has
it
an
still a
probably
good
ends like
show.
the book, so I have read the book.
okay. I really like the world building they do in that show. It's all of the questions you would wonder about in that universe where those things are possible. They kind of touch on throughout.
If you like
the-
that, you might like reading the book because you get even more of that kind of
Okay,
detail.
maybe.
All right, shall we begin the main show, the main event?
Oh,
What accent is that?
I don't know. I was just trying to figure that out myself. There was a little German, touch of Indian, and then something that's unidentifiable, all mixed in together.
Probably Lawrence Welk.
Maybe.
A 1 and a 2. And
Yeah, could be. Anyway, my apologies. I want to apologize if I offended anyone, but since it's not actually a real accent, I don't know who that would be. So let's just do the show. Here we go. Daily Tech News Show is powered by you. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. From DTNS headquarters in Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
And back at Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
And from Poop Central in Helsinki with a very small baby sleeping in the next room, I'm Patrick Beja.
You got to be careful using that one too many times. It's going to stick.
Literally.
Literally. Our producer, Roger Chang, is here as well. Roger Chang, how are you?
Good.
That's all we need. You don't have to even say it a third time. We get it. You're good.
Good.
Let's start with a few tech things you should know.
You know, after a holiday weekend, it's tough.
Yeah, true.
Snapchat has added the ability to add GIFs, and yes, that's how it's pronounced, from the Giphy search engine as stickers in your snaps. Snapchat also added tabs to the Friends and Discover screens.
GIFs everywhere. Choi Hong-sik, governor of South Korea's Financial Supervisory Service, told reporters that his agency is making efforts to normalize cryptocurrency trading. Choi, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it, wants to establish a real name account system and money laundering guidelines. Meanwhile, in Japan, 16 cryptocurrency exchanges plan to create a self-regulating body there.
So Bitcoin's bouncing back, people.
Buy now. I'm kidding. Maybe.
That is not actually financial advice. Samsung began production in January of a 30.72 terabyte solid state drive. You heard me right. 30 terabytes. The model number is the PM1643. It is now the largest capacity solid state drive in production. Has sequential read and write speeds of up to 2100 megabytes per second and 1700 megabytes per second, respectively. And of course, no price was announced. This is meant for enterprise, meant for industrial use. Not going to fit. The 15 terabyte from 2016 hasn't even bubbled down to you yet. But I always get fascinated by these.
I wish they didn't call it PM1643, but something like Behemoth or, I don't know, massive.
Couldn't it have been at 31 terabyte?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Let's round up. Come on, people.
Hey, you're so close.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about payment systems, Patrick.
Yeah, you know what? Android Pay is now Google Pay for Android.
That's not confusing.
At all. Google Pay for Android. Just call it that. The app update is rolling out and has a redesign and some new functionality, such as the home screen, which now shows you relevant stores around you where you can pay with Google Pay based on your location and previous stores where you used the service.
Yeah, I thought one of the cool things about it too is they have struck deals with some banks, not all banks, but banks around the world, not just in the US, where you can set up Google Pay just in your bank. You don't even have to install Google Pay for Android, and then you can use Google Pay on your phone to pay with that credit card, with that bank's card.
You know, in France, I don't know the status of Google Pay, but it seems that almost every bank that was first poo-pooing Apple Pay has now announced they are integrating it. And they were saying, we're going to make our own service. It's going to be so much better. But I don't know exactly what happened there, but maybe, mobile payment is gaining ground all around in France, even though banks were not super enthusiastic to begin with.
Well, the discovery aspect, I think, is really important. If I don't have Android, but I have Apple Pay, and so it's like if I just sort of knew on a home screen, oh, this store actually accepts that, then I know going in before I get there, and then I get used to using it.
But would you select a store though from which kind of payment it accepts?
I wouldn't select the store, but if I knew ahead of time that Apple Pay was accepted, I would use it.
Yeah, if I know Google Pay is accepted, I'll pull out my Essential phone and I'll pay with it.
Essential phone. Qualcomm raised its offer to buy NXP semiconductors to $127.50 per share. As you will recall, this will force Broadcom, which is trying to buy Qualcomm, to reassess a stipulation in its $121 billion bid for Qualcomm that Qualcomm does not raise the previous $110 per share offer for NXP. So Qualcomm is basically saying, well, we want to, because that's what it's worth. Broadcom is now nominating members for Qualcomm's board to be voted on March 6th.
Yeah, so, wow. NXP has a bunch of wireless technology that Qualcomm wants to have because a lot of it has to do with cars. and Qualcomm wants some help getting farther into the car market. Broadcom wants to own Qualcomm because Broadcom makes older modem and wireless chips, and it wants all of Qualcomm's like main chip production and wants to be part of that. And this is all part of a consolidation of this particular sector of the market because there's so much price leverage in the hands of Apple and Samsung mostly that a lot of these companies feel they need to team up in order to combat that leverage. It's interesting that Qualcomm doesn't think it wants Broadcom, but Broadcom thinks that it should. You know?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I think that story is a little bit confusing. All I'm kind of hearing is ARM semiconductor manufacturers are teaming up because things are heating up.
Well, Qualcomm's ARM, and NXP does some ARM, but it's all about the part makers are like, crap, Apple and Samsung have way too much leverage over us.
Right,
but Qualcomm wants to stay independent of Broadcom. They don't think Broadcom's business is worth it to them. They think NXP's is. And so they raised their price on NXP because Broadcom said, we don't want you to pay too much for NXP, but we do want to buy you even though you don't want us to buy you.
Yeah, but it's all ARM, right? All of this is
Qualcomm stuff is ARM. Not all of it's ARM. A lot of it's like modems and Wi-Fi.
Right. But all of them, all of the CPUs in those things it's ARM extended.
I see what you did. Technology recycler Eric Lundgren was convicted of conspiracy and copyright infringement against Microsoft for manufacturing 28,000 Windows Restore disks back in 2013. He was sentenced to 15 months in prison and a $50,000 fine. Now, that sounds uncontroversial, right? No, he counterfeited Windows. Of course he's going to get that. But a federal appeals court has granted an emergency stay of the sentence so that Lundgren can appeal because Lundgren says, I don't deny I made the discs, and I don't deny that I hope to sell them, but I didn't sell them. And he said he was just trying to extend the life of refurbished computers. His appeal is pending before the 11th Circuit. What he was doing, and this is interesting, was downloading restore disks from Dell, which you can do for free, burning them to disk, which is not illegal, and offering them to people who had legal license keys on refurbished computers, but no disk. He says, I'm just charging for the service. You can do this yourself. If you have a computer you're refurbishing and the drive is blank, but you've got a valid license key, you can go to Dell's website, download a restore disk image, burn it to a disk, and install it on that machine. You have the legal right to do that. He says, all I'm doing is making it easier for people to refurbish computers by providing these disks and charging them a little for the service.
And just to be clear, the disks do require, the software on the disks does require a valid key in order to be functional.
Yes, and
right?
Lundgren wasn't trying to get around that. He said you can only use these disks if you have a valid key. Like there's no cracked software. It's just the actual restore image from Dell that he wanted to give to people who were refurbishing computers to encourage them to refurbish them. His big mistake, though, was to burn the Dell and Windows logos onto the disks to make them look like actual restore disks, which is why he got the copyright violation.
Okay, and so he's saying he did burn the disks, he did hope to sell them, but he didn't. What he was selling was the service of downloading them and burning them and making them look like they were legit. I think it seems like his defense makes sense, but the way he was doing it doesn't really sync with what he's saying he was doing or the intent with which he was doing it.
Yeah,
well, it's
Go
also
ahead,
like, his whole thing is like, I was just recycling. I'm the recycling guy, which is kind of great in theory. If you think about like, okay, if you take his word at face value, it's like, well, he was doing a good deed, I guess. But if there's not a law that, allows him to do that sort of thing, it's like, yeah, Microsoft's going to go after you.
Well, okay. So you want to take that one, Patrick?
Yeah. If he's just downloading the thing, printing them on disks, and giving them to the people who need it, and charging them a tiny fee for that service, sure. Why does he need to burn the logos? on the discs, for
And
example.
he admits, he's like, burning the logos was a mistake. I'll pay for that. I'll pay the trademark violation. That's what he expected. He didn't expect a prison sentence because he didn't think he would get convicted of counterfeiting, because he says, I'm not counterfeiting.
Well, he is, though. Yeah, whether or not he wanted
he's downloading a freely available image and burning it to disk. He actually didn't sell any of them yet.
Wait, so he sold the service, though, quote unquote.
He didn't actually sell any of them. He intended to.
No, but you're saying I'm helping and people are paying me for the service.
Right. His intention was to charge them a little bit of a fee for doing it for them.
Never got paid.
Yeah, and he never actually
never got paid.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, yeah, if he didn't receive money, it seems like definitely this is whatever the intention was. He didn't receive money. This seems excessive.
Yep. Faux POS in the chat room says selling something with someone else's logo printed on it equals trouble. That's
right,
pretty much true.
That's Well, but in this case, he didn't sell it, which is the key. He didn't receive money.
We have a funeral, guys. Ready?
What?
R.I.P. Swype keyboard. Well, soon anyway. Nuance Communications, which bought Swype for $100 million back in 2011. Gosh, it's like 7 years ago now. Confirmed to XDA developers that Swype is no longer in development for Android or iOS. In response to a Reddit poster who emailed Swype developers about a bug on Android, the company replied it would instead concentrate on developing AI solutions for sale directly to businesses. It's now confirmed that with a post on its website saying it's leaving the, quote, direct-to-consumer keyboard business to concentrate on developing our AI solutions for sale. Swype was a big deal back in the day. I didn't realize that it sold back in 2011. It seems like so long ago.
It seems like it was a big deal, and then people were, clamoring to get keyboards on iOS, third-party keyboards, and obviously they already had them on Android, and it was a big thing, and everyone was like, oh, how can you not have it? And then it arrived, and everyone was like, yeah, this is awesome. And now it seems like the hype has died down a little bit. I'm sure some people use third-party keyboards and are super excited about them, but even the little app store, keyboard app store on iOS has not gone very far, it seems. So has it died down, the hype?
I think the hype has, but not the usefulness. I know a lot of people use Gboard and are very happy with Gboard these days. In fact, folks in our Slack were talking about that too. And there's other, you can get SwiftKey still. Like SwiftKey and Gboard are probably your best bets if you're looking for an alternative. I think there's a little nostalgia going on here of like, hey man, I really liked Swype, and there's probably a lot of people still using it, and it's still used. You could still even download it. They're just not developing it anymore.
Which means you probably shouldn't download it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where Swype was like, wow, think about, you're just connecting the letters. It was very novel, and for a lot of people, it was really helpful. And yeah, it took a while to come to iOS, and it never really stuck with me, but I certainly know, plenty of folks who were like, this is the keyboard.
Best thing ever.
R-I-P, it's one swipe.
Okay. Hey, you know what? Two companies that track online disinformation, New Knowledge and the Alliance for Securing Democracy, claim that Twitter account bots that may have links to Russia began tweeting about the Parkland school shooting shortly after the tragedy in an effort to spark debate on divisive U.S. issues. Federal and congressional investigations are looking at Russia's role in influencing the U.S. presidential election in 2016 and the role social media played.
So if you're wondering, like, okay, who are these? New Knowledge is some Austin folks who one of the CEO used to be a product manager at AOL a long time ago and has moved up and run companies and startups. So they are a real group of people, not bots themselves. And the Alliance for Securing Democracy, that's got Michael Chertoff, former Bush era Homeland Security head. It's got Bill Kristol involved in it. So these are not. It's interesting these days when you throw out names like this. It's like, okay, but did somebody just create a website for that? So I looked into that. These are real organizations, and honestly, Patrick, I'm not surprised. I'm like, of course the bots came out. I mean, that's definitely what's going to happen for a while.
That quickly though, and that efficiently. I mean, they're talking about 1 hour after the event happened.
Yeah, why would it take longer?
Well, you know what? I think we might have an opportunity to talk about that very topic in the discussion.
All right. You know what? That's a very good point. Folks, if you want all the tech headlines each day, subscribe to Daily Tech Headlines on Amazon Echo, Google Home, etc. Anchor app, dailytechheadlines.com. But let's get into our main discussion because it bears particularly on this. Charlie Warzel from BuzzFeed posted a story earlier this month about Aviv Ovadia, chief technologist at the Center for Social Media Responsibility. He gave a talk a few weeks before the 2016 election called Infocalypse, which sounds dirty, but it's spelled Infocalypse. About, or maybe it's maybe Infocalypse, about a crisis of misinformation. So a lot of people say he's the guy who predicted fake news. He knew about it before anybody else and nobody would listen to him. His premise is that platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Google prioritize clicks, shares, ads, and essentially money-making opportunities over the value of information. And that's been the discussion that's been happening since the election, basically, and has really heated up this year. Ovadia says it's going to get worse. He talks about things like reality apathy, where people start to say, I don't know what to believe anymore, so I'm not going to believe anything. Or automated laser phishing, where instead of just sending you a phishing email, they get really good at impersonating the tone, maybe even the video or the voice of your friend to convince you to hand over your personal information. There's even crazy things like human puppets, where people are tricked into acting on behalf of someone else without their knowledge. Anyway, he's warning that technologies will distort what's real faster than we can learn to mitigate against them, Patrick.
I think the idea of reality apathy should be developed a little bit further. The reason he's coming to that conclusion is that we're getting really good at creating fake reality. If we thought that fake news was, something that had happened and now we have to deal with it, his argument, and I think there is some weight to it, is that technology is actually still advancing, and there are tools that allow you to create fake footage, video and audio footage of real people or fake people that just look real enough that it gets confusing. And his theory, he's positing the idea that when you get so much of that looks good enough, and it takes too much work to distinguish what's real from what's not, at some point you just, give up and you just throw your hands up in the air and you're like, all right, well, whatever. I don't even know what's real anymore. I don't care. It might all be fake for all I know. It's just whatever. And I think if I had heard that kind of line of thinking a couple of years ago, I might have said, well, all right, people will still care. At this point, I'm not sure at all. I think he has a very valid concern, which we have to be aware of. And
on the subject of apathy, it's like, that is what, if you want to talk politics, it's like, call your representative, but sound your voice. The apathy is the problem, right? Most people just don't go through the trouble of, letting the people who make decisions know how they feel, even if they do feel a certain way. So it's sort of like you've got an apathetic group of folks who could enact change, but don't necessarily do that. But bots never get tired. So now it's kind of a, it's not so much a, come on, everybody, let's get together. It's more of like, why is this happening? What is the surge? Is it real? Does it actually, go back to anything that's tangible? And is it designed to, to fool a large group of people?
And if I can't tell who the bots are, I give up, right? And that's where the apathy gets really bad.
Right.
Here's the thing that I just want to step us back for a second, because this may be different this time, but with books and the printed word, with radio, with sound recordings, with television, with Photoshop, it's always been, this time reality can be faked and people can be convinced that something is true that isn't true, and we're going to get problems because of that. And reality apathy isn't a new concept. But every time, our society has figured out a way to adapt to that and say, okay, well, we know what the risks are and we can still have a productive conversation. every time this happens too, someone says, but this time it's different. Yes, in radio, we got used to it, and we had the War of the Worlds scare, but we got over it. But television is visual. It's different. So why is this time really different? That's the key question that needs to be addressed, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think it might be. I think it might not be different. We won't know until a few years from now. I think one of the issues is the flooding and the speed with which these fake reality elements can be fabricated. It's all automated, and he's talking about a specific term. I forgot, computational propaganda, I think. Yeah. And so the issue becomes, first of all, you drown people in fake things. So even if you can tell with a little bit of work, you can actually produce so much fake that reality is lost in the middle of it. And the other thing is you can cast doubt on reality, meaning someone who did something can then pretend, oh, I didn't really do that, it's fabricated. And yes, you might disprove it, but it might take too much time, or people will have something to latch onto to say, oh, well, he says it's fabricated, and I want to believe that. Which, by the way, President Trump has started mentioning a few months ago about his the famous recording, the locker talk recording. So we've seen some of that maybe happening already. What he is, I'm talking about Ovadia now. He is saying there are good signs, however, because in the fake news issue, it sort of fell on our heads and we weren't aware. He's saying we are more aware of it. And so we're thinking about it and looking at it. And there are ways to verify cryptographically the reality of an image or an audio recording or something like that. I don't know the technical details, but he's saying there are ways of doing that. So I think ultimately, if your prediction, Tom, or your observation, which this always happens and we find ways, if that is to become true, I think we're going to be placing a much higher value on trust. Trust might become actually a currency. You know, the volume or explosiveness of the information might not be as valuable as how much you trust the source. And hopefully, within a few years, we will know to distinguish and to search for the origin of a piece of information. Where does it come from? It comes from somewhere I don't know. Oh, maybe we need to have a very verified network, and it comes from Twitter. No one's verified there. I'm not going to trust it. It comes from this other social network or this.
Well, it's interesting that you say currency. It's interesting that you say currency because a trustable currency runs on a blockchain. And I think the cryptographically verification could involve blockchain for content and for images.
Yeah, could be. So yeah, maybe I think trust is going to become a very valuable currency if that is to happen.
Looking ahead, just because historically every sort of social network since they became a thing kind of dies and a better one emerges. We're still in the Facebook era where it's like, well, there's Twitter too, of course, but Facebook is like, what's going to beat Facebook? No one knows. It seems like it's not going anywhere. And I wonder if this is the beginning of the trust breakdown, and I'm looking ahead a bit, but the trust breakdown where it sort of ends up failing or collapsing because enough people realize that most of it is BS.
Yeah. This could, I had the same thought. This could be the thing that maybe doesn't kill Facebook, but stops Facebook's dominance. It's funny how we often think in pairs of opposites as a community. Like, nothing can stop Facebook. Also, Facebook is going to collapse. Like, you hear both things out there. So I will finish. I will wrap us up by saying what happens usually is the new threats that are real overwhelm us at first, look like they're unassailable. It takes somebody like Ovadia raising the panic to get us to understand how to combat them. And the same tools that can be used to create the problem often can be turned against the problem. And if nothing else, it either turns into an arms race or some kind of equilibrium. And that's what Ovadia's, that's what he's campaigning for, is let's get this to equilibrium. Right now, not enough people are paying attention to the problem. And let's get to it before it becomes a huge problem on a world stage, which that is what's different, is this is much more global than even television or radio were before it. Hey, thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com and our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. You know, email's old-fashioned. You can rely on that. What's in our mailbag, Sarah?
Well, it made me sad that I missed Friday's show because it sounded like a cool discussion about the Robonaut. Back in 2010, David says, I was interning at Johnson Space Center, and I was on the Robonaut 2 program working on the GUI and motion stop system. David goes on to say, while I was there, the Robonaut 2 launched the final flight of Space Shuttle Discovery. The team had 5 months to go from a prototype to a flight-ready design. It was a big accomplishment. I still remember sitting in the EMI chamber for 3 days straight, staring at an oscilloscope to test the power supply performance. It's unfortunate that the ground was missed. The legs were just an idea at that point. And then he says, with regard to R2's, Robonaut 2's size, it's genderless, so, you know, it's an it. It's roughly human size. And then he actually sent us a photo of himself standing next to the R2 shaking hands. And David says, I'm 6'2", so just for reference.
Yeah, so he's like just about the same size as the Robonaut in that's sitting up on a table in that picture.
I love it.
That's cool, David. Thank you for sending that to us and sending us those pictures. Like, I love that we can talk about something like the Robonaut and then have somebody's like, oh, yeah, I worked on that.
Right, exactly. What a cool internship.
Yeah, no kidding. That's really cool. Thank you, David, for sending that to us.
And thank you to Patrick Beja for being with us. What's been going on the last week?
Well, let's see. We just recorded an episode of the Phileas Club where I talked to a friend of mine who was in the French Navy for a few years. And we discussed life on a warship, on a French warship, how things go day to day, things like that. And then he dove into his experiences with the refugee crisis and rescuing some of those refugees and piracy on the high seas and things like that. It was, I thought, a really interesting episode. And if you think you might be interested as well, just head over to FrenchSpin.com and check it out. It's the Phileas Club 104. And you can also follow me on Twitter. I'm not Patrick on Twitter.
The definition of exposing yourself to another perspective is to listen to this. I love the Phileas Club. I always listen to every one of them. This is one where I'm like, what am I know a little bit about navies. I learned so much. And not just about how the French Navy differs from the U.S. Navy or what they do on board that I didn't know, but like you said about the refugee crisis in particular, that's really compelling storytelling from your guest. So I highly recommend it, folks. Go check it out.
Thank you.
Hey, we need 19 of you people out there because we have 18 fewer patrons than last month right now, mostly due to people having tight finances, according to the surveys. So if you can afford $1 a month and you get $1's worth out of the show every month, take a moment right now, or when you get back from your run or your drive, don't forget, though, to go help us out at patreon.com/DTNS. Be one of the magic 19 that helps get us to our goal in February. That's patreon.com/DTNS.
Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 21:30 UTC. Thanks to everybody who joins us live. And find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
Back tomorrow with Scott Johnson. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Great show. What should we call it?
Wonderful program.
It was so good. That was a really good conversation. Good idea, Patrick.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was, I thought it would be a little bit more heated, but it's probably good it wasn't.
Heated like we were going to disagree?
oh my
Or get
God, the sky is
passionate.
falling. Yeah. The
Okay,
sky
but
is
I
falling,
didn't
everything.
go to my normal place that I sort of promised you I might, which is but we haven't proved the evidence. And the reason I didn't is after I went through and read the BuzzFeed article again, I realized he's actually pointing out a more real issue. Then I think there's still, like, I don't disagree that the fake news thing is a problem, but I hate it because copyright issues do the same thing, where people say, well, we know it's a problem, so let's fix it. And it's like, well, wait a minute, hold on. Until we know the extent of the problem and how the problem happened, you can't fix it. Your fix isn't going to necessarily work.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's definitely something to be
cognizant of.
Cognizant of. But what he's saying is, let's be aware of this new thing that is happening and let's understand it more than really,
Exactly.
Oh my God, the sky's falling, let's fix everything now. And I think that is important, whether or not.
What I think is genius about his approach is he's like, folks, the sky is falling. This is how it's falling. It's going to fall on you. But actually, if we actually all realize that it's falling, now that I have your attention, maybe we can stop it from falling.
Yeah, I think it's and also, it's interesting because the way the article is framed, and I think the way his image is framed is, he knew it was going to happen before it happened, but that's really not what actually happened. It was happening around him, and he realized it was happening, and he was saying, "This is happening now." It's a few before the election.
Right,
it's not like 2 years before he predicted it. So
noise ex machina. The revolution will be televised, but will be ignored as noise. Who to trust when signal is noise? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's not a very good title.
Swiped away is good.
Swiped away.
Swiped away.
That's nice, yeah. However, I will interrupt and abscond because I think the baby woke up and I don't want.
No, you better get going.
My wife.
No worries.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick.
Many hugs.
Bye,
Love you.
Patrick.
Good show.
See you next week.
Bye. Cats, be nice to your Sarah. Bye.
Well, they're nice to me. They're just yelling at each other the entire show, howling. They're just
So which one do we like?
Noise ex machina, swiping left on swipe. I like who to trust when signal is noise.
Who to trust when signal is noise. That's pretty good. Which one did you like, Sarah?
Swiped away.
Swiped away.
Like swept away. Get it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that a
disaster movie?
Yeah, with oh gosh, what's her name? Short hair, blonde.
Was she in Seattle?
Meg Whitman?
No,
Meg Ryan?
Meg Whitman.
Oh no, it's has
Yes, Meg Whitman. And
Madonna.
oh,
Was it
Swept
Madonna?
Away, right, by
Madonna
Guy Ritchie?
movie.
Romantic comedy.
Oh, right.
Was that when she was with Guy Ritchie?
She was, yes, and it was, not
How do I know that?
well
It was
received.
according to Wikipedia, it was a box office bomb.
Well, she's not. Well, she did get a Golden Globe for playing Eva Perón.
But a bombshell is a good
I
thing.
wouldn't call her
A bombshell. Yeah.
My favorite
Bombshell's a good thing,
actress.
but box office bomb is a bad thing.
correct.
Ponder
Roger,
on
did
that.
you see Black Panther over the weekend?
I can't
I haven't
see
seen it
any of
either.
those. I can't see any of those movies because if I go, I feel I won't enjoy it because I feel like I need to have. I should have brought my wife, and she can't come because someone has to look after the kid. So I probably won't be able to see it till it comes to streaming, or
Well,
I just get it from Amazon.
Considering that everyone loves this movie so much, you can always drop Ellie off with me and the cats if you guys want to go see a movie. You'd have to come to my part of town. But I'm a pretty good babysitter.
Yeah, and you've got the AMC Dine-In theaters nearby. So
Yeah, they're very nice.
All right, I'll ask my wife. See what Jen thinks. Let's see, so we're going with what did we go with? Swiped away.
Oh yeah, Swiped Away. This is what I went with.
Rom-com.
Yeah, I never saw
Rom-com.
it, but I
That's
don't
how
think it is.
the read-only memory communicates.
Right.
Through canned laughter. Oh wait, that's not a rom-com.
That's Rom Can.
So what do you call a comedic sitcom? Oh no, that's a situation comedy sitcom.
It's a sitcom. It's a situation. What do you? Is
Sitcom,
there a
yeah.
non-sitcom? Is there an unsituated comedy? Comedy with no situations?
Yeah, that would be something
Is
like
that just stand up?
No, it would be like it would be a single camera comedy show ish, like
The Muppet Show?
is like something like is Blackish a single camera?
No,
No,
that's totally a sitcom.
I can't think of anything that's a comedy that isn't a sitcom. That isn't, like a live show or a stand-up thing.
like I would point to Northern Exposure, but that's more of a what do they call it? Dramedy, which is drama. With comedic
Sketch.
elements.
Sketch comedy. Thank you, Nick with a C. That's another example.
That's true.
Monty Python, Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. That's the only thing I don't like about the Olympics is they stop SNL. Stop down SNL.
They did a 5-minute version of The Tonight Show during the Olympic coverage last night, which I was very skeptical about, but he actually executed it pretty well. Like, he did a pretty beefy monologue that was about half the 5 minutes, and then brought out Paul Rudd, and they did a hilarious, like, two-word answers to interviews, and then sang, and then we're done.
I saw them doing
I didn't see that.
the remake to King of Wishful Thinking by Go West.
Yeah, I still don't understand why they made it, but it is hilarious.
Because it's
I love
funny.
that song. It's a really good song.
That was from what's the one
Pretty
where
Woman?
Pretty Woman. That was it.
Yeah.
let's see.
I had
The
that
hooker-
soundtrack, so I know all the songs. Is that right? King of Wishful Thinking, is that from...
Yep.
Yeah, that's from Pretty Woman.
Yeah, because the video has like allusions to Pretty Woman in it.
Oh, okay. The also Must Have Been Loved by Roxette is on the Pretty Woman soundtrack.
But it's over now.
Remember when they were like the power Swedish pop band?
Were they Swedish?
Yeah.
I didn't even know
And
that.
then
Who, Go West?
No,
No,
Roxette.
no,
Oh,
Roxette.
Roxette. Sorry.
And then it became like it was
Go
like
west
first
to Sweden.
it was Europe, then Roxette, and then in between there was like a bunch of other bands. But
That's
it
what they
kind
call
of
them in
settled
Finland.
on the Cardigans, or not the was it the Cardigans?
Cardigans were Swedish.
Yes,
that much I
Cardigans.
know.
And then
ABBA was Swedish.
That too. Who else was Swedish?
King Bluetooth.
oh no,
Someone named Sven.
Milli Vanilli was German. No, there's another big Swedish band. Who am I thinking of? I Saw the Sign.
yeah, Ace of Base.
Ace of Base. Yeah. They
I remember that
They had their good
because-
run.
Serafina and Camilla were drunk and were singing into a hairbrush at one of our Revision 3 parties singing that song.
Oh, Camilla. Does anybody keep in touch with her anymore?
Yes.
Where is she? Where has she landed?
She went she moved to Malta because I helped her get a job there because she needed like her old boss to interview or speak on her behalf. So I basically was interviewed by two potential bosses. She did a bunch of adventure vacation stuff, like you climb to the top of a mountain with a group or
Nice.
Cool.
stuff. And
Good for her.
she announced that she will be expecting in August.
Oh. Well, great. I've never been to Malta, so I'm like,
I have been to Malta.
He's collected a couple of the falcons there.
I actually bought a souvenir Maltese falcon for Eileen there. I don't really know too much about what it's like. I got out into the city one day. It was there for a press event for IFA, and so most of the time was in a hotel. But I did get out into the city for one day, and it's very Mediterranean, almost Middle Eastern, but heavily Catholic.
It's kind of like
well, it probably. I mean, it's closer to Greek culture than anything else, as I understand.
Sort
it's
of.
very interesting because they did mapping of the genes that are most related to people in southern Italy.
Yeah, that
in
makes
terms
sense.
So, but they're heavily Catholic, so it's kind of like Beirut in Lebanon before the civil war started. So it's a very,
But
very
it was beautiful. It was very dry, as I recall, and people were really nice, and the food was great.
Did they have water restrictions? I've always wondered that about islands. Because Hawaii was very strict about like don't flush the like where we stay. It's like don't flush the toilet too often unless you need to. All the rest.
I have not usually had that experience.
They're having such a crisis down in Cape Town, and apparently the community has been doing their job, and so they're like backing off the. This is when we run out of water. Still going to run out, but like the due date keeps getting pushed back.
Looking at the pictures of it, it's remarkable how similar California was. Not even more than like a couple of years ago. Like people's like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah. Well, I think Cape Town is, the longitude is reversed, but it's kind of the same
distance from the equator.
Yeah. I think that they do share a lot of similarities with our weather and climate. Or somebody told me that anyway.
Yeah.
And as in California, a lot of the water usage in that region, not just in the city of Cape Town or the metro area of Cape Town, but on the other side of the hill is agriculture. And so, there's been like, well, how do we make this more efficient? Like
right.
Previously,
well, I think there's a pretty big wine business, in the outskirts because of the climate. South African wine is often from the region.
I had South African wine. I don't remember anything about it, though.
Me either. But I know it exists.
It does. We're not going to deny that. All right. Hey, thanks, everybody, for watching.
All right. And we'll see you tomorrow with Scott Johnson.
Talk to you then.